Okay, welcome to another episode of On Point EDC. Today we have an awesome new review for you from the brand Spartan Blades. Now, they were established back in 2008, and they produce proudly made in the USA knives. They are headquartered out of Fort Bragg in North Carolina, and they were founded by two former U.S. Army Special Forces operators. And they really focus on producing knives with intent, basically purposely designed for a task and environment. They've won numerous Blade Show awards to include 2016 and 2017 American Made Knife of the Year. Now, this particular type of knife would be considered a frame lock. Some key common characteristics in design language when you're looking for a frame lock knife is, of course, that lock type, which is going to be the Chris Reeve integral lock, which is just an evolution of the Walker liner lock. It has a titanium handle and an integrated frame lock, hence the name. Now, this is their Spartan Harsey Folder 3.25, or the SHF 3.25, and it's basically a collaboration with the legendary knife maker William Bill Harsey Jr. Now, this is really meant to be a smaller gentleman's take on the full-sized SHF. And I gotta say, this thing is sweet. It's a little bit smaller, I'd say, than many of you are going to think in person, because I believe it's more about the proportions, not necessarily the scale actually being small, because when you compare it to other knives of similar size, those ones don't actually seem that small in comparison, which I think is pretty interesting. So looking forward to getting a couple of those on here for the size comparison. But with that said, let's go ahead, zoom the camera out, get this piece in hand, and take a closer look. All right, now before I pick this up, quick wristwatch check. This is my Dekla Turbulens, and I do have it on this nice Rios strap, and then I just put a matte finished buckle on there to tie in with this hardened steel case. The reason why I wore this, also it's new to my collection, and also one that I recently reviewed, so check out the full review if this interests you. Basically, I figure this type of watch would actually fly really well with the EDC crowd. This is made in Germany, has 200 meters of water resistance, screw down crown, no date design, which is great. So you have the great symmetry. Also has extremely well applied loom on here, and obviously being that German made design and that kind of modern Flieger style, it actually is very similar to something you might see from Damasco or Zinn, but for a lot less money, but nonetheless capable. So that is what's flopping around my wrist while I do the review of this excellent Spartan Blades knife. Now let's see how this looks. Wow. So this is the show side. Very nice. You can see beautiful contouring here for the finger grooves, and just all the way around you're going to get a lot of great bevels. A little bit sharp on the jimping, but being that this is really meant to be a knife with a purpose, I really can't fault it for that. Beautifully signed blade there, looks like by the designer, very nice. And then we do have great nice engraving for USA, and then as well as the Spartan Blades logo. You have this very nice spring clip here that does have this nice little milling work done to show the little broad arrow, which is nice. You also do have a lanyard hole, which I don't think they needed to really have, because you have the standoffs. You can always tie a lanyard off of those, or they could have put a lanyard pin in there, maybe made it a little bit more formal, because it is a little bit more of a gentleman's knife. And even on camera right now, it actually might not seem that small, but there's just something about it when you open up the box. And it might just be because this piece of the, as you can see, the handle, the shape, it does taper off here. So although you're getting some length out of it, a lot of the heft is taken out, and it's just a little, just opens a little bit. And honestly, look how far that tip goes. So you're really maximizing the blade length to handle ratio on this, but very nice. So this goes for $395, and you can get that while supplies last directly from their website or from dealers. If you just do a quick Google search, you can see that it does have that nice branding there for the S45VN CPM, which is a US-based crucible steel. It's considered a super stainless steel versus maybe a more premium stainless steel like S45VN. We do have that nice flat grind, beautiful stone washed blade, drop point shape. The handle is all 6A L4V titanium. So very nice, and you have a great bead blast there. You can see a little bit, a hint of the machining kind of milling lines through that finishing, but you can also see beautiful bevels on the edges there, so it catches the light. Also helps it feel very nicely finished, which it definitely is. And of course, this is produced in the good old US of A. The overall length is only just a touch over 7 inches at 7.125. The blade length is just over 3 inches at 3 1/4, and then the close length is just shy of 4 inches at 3.95 inches, basically from top length to bottom length. The weight is just shy of 3 ounces at only 2.9, so it's not extremely lightweight, but it's also at the same time not heavy, but it does have, I feel like, the appropriate balanced heft to it, and it's really quite good. In-hand ergonomics, man, this thing feels very, very comfortable, you know, great at various grasps, even if you want to kind of go the EDC route or you really want to choke up on it. It's really nice, and your fingers do find, they find those grooves well, and you can lock in. And that jimping, although maybe a little rough at first, it's functional. It does help with the grip, regardless of kind of the grasp or the hold you're going for. It is nice to really be able to lock in there, and then even if you're using various grasps for different types of cutting. So jimping is very nice. The action is very smooth. Definitely has that kind of glass open and closed feel, but it is a little bit snappier in terms of the open versus something like, let's say, Chris Reeve Sabenza, where even the open isn't going to be quite this snappy, but the close feels very, very similar because it does have those phosphor bronze, as you can see. If I can get it to focus, there you go. And you can see they have the offset where you have on the show side, you have a larger washer, and then you have the smaller washer on the lock side there. So really nice from that standpoint. In pocket, very small footprint, very solid spring clip. It's not a deep carry, but it's not overly exposing anything out of your pocket either. It's not like one where like they'll set it down here and it scoots everything. This is still relatively close to the tip of the knife, so can't really fault it too much. And ultimately, it's quite useful to have a lanyard there, a lanyard hole there, because your lanyard will be protruding. So again, this functionally definitely works, although maybe stylistically could be a little bit more refined. Now, as far as model variants go, there really aren't too many for the 3 1/4 inch blade. Really, you're gonna find all the variations for the full size Spartan Harsey Folder, but that is something that I'm sure they will extend the line depending on how popular this size variation is. As far as comparable models go, of course, first thing you think of, Chris Reeve small Sabenza. Also USA made. I do have a milled clip also made out of Idaho. But geez, what was the brand that makes this? Somebody's gonna jump. They're already typing in there, and I haven't even spit it out yet. Millet Knives makes these milled pocket clips. They go perfectly with this. But as you can see, they're very similar in size. This way it doesn't skew too much based off of the slight angle of the camera. So you can see very similar in length, width, kind of the girth, but you do have a little bit of a longer tail on here. But as far as the quality goes, feels very similar as well. Really, honestly, reminds me a lot of ZT-0450. Look at that. The contours, the kind of general sweeping area for the handle. Of course, I do have like this MXGR clip on here. Also aftermarket carbon fiber scale to lighten things up. And then also aftermarket standoffs and titanium hardware. But apart from all that, that's that's a pretty close look there. So it feels very similar in hand. So if you really like the 0450, but maybe you're not a flipper guy, or maybe you just never jumped on it while it was still available. I'm pretty sure these are well discontinued now. But solid knife, honestly. Picking this up again really kind of reminds me of what a good knife it is. And ergonomically, these are very, very similar. So they have very similar footprints. You know, also another USA made special as well. But those are pretty dated knives that I've shown. I mean, the Sebenza, this is a 21 small, and then, you know, they already have the 31 now, which I'm waiting for them to release in single blade. But as far as something kind of newer on the market that this reminds me of, I'd say this Pena X Series Mula. Although the Mula definitely has more of kind of a modern appeal to it, it does have a very similar general shape, as you can see there. Even with the handle a bit, I'd say this is going to be a little bit more industrial, where here you're going to be a little bit more organic with some of those flowy lines and more ornate details here. A little bit more of a minimalist setup, but very, very similar in terms of their profile. But this one being just a little bit fatter, although the lengths, you know, it's a little bit longer, a little bit fatter. So if you maybe liked this Pena but felt that it was a touch too large for you, definitely a little bit more modern, being on bearings, but also has a very, very touchy lock bar tension there. Like if you rest your hand on there and try to flip this, it's gonna just it just doesn't feel quite the same as when you rest your finger there. You don't really have that problem on this bad boy here. One thing also to note, if you were probably looking for it, we do not have a lock bar insert. It's basically carbonized lock face there, so there is a zero lock stick. And then as far over travel, the oversized pivot, which is nicely symmetrical to this side, actually does stop the lock bar from extending too far. And then the nice thing is you do have quite a late lock up there. Almost feels a little bit scary, but then you kind of remember that this is a relatively thin knife. So the travel that goes over, I mean, we can compare it to a Sebenza. You know, similar lock up there, as you can see, also carbonized. So you don't necessarily have to have a lock bar insert. It is nice to have, but when it's done right like this, I mean, less working parts, you know, less points of failure is definitely kind of a nice way to really keep it minimal. I'm really digging this knife, guys. And yeah, it's probably on camera, it probably doesn't seem that small, but I mean, I do have kind of a medium-sized hand, so I will say, yeah, I was a little bit surprised and taken back when I opened. I think maybe when I imagined it was going to be more to the shape, to the size of the ZT-0450, but it is just a touch shorter than it. If I kind of go pivot to pivot, the blades are about the same, but you can see there's just a little bit more handle on here, and something about that, just having just a touch more handle on it, I think makes it feel a little bit larger versus here. This thing is just, you know, really, really compact, which works out, don't get me wrong. You know, this really, I'd say the best way to describe this is if Rick Hinderer Knives decided to make a Sebenza, or a Sebenza competitor, a direct competitor anyway. This is probably what they would produce. And when I say that, it's just because it does have that Hinderer kind of vibe to it. When you look at the way the milling done, the beveling, some of the hardware choices with the standoffs, the really big tactile and slightly sharp jimping here, it just makes you think of that really overbuilt kind of tool aesthetic that you get with a Hinderer. But here you have a much more refined design, really flowing and organic, that I really like. You know, it's not overly simple, but it definitely feels like it's built with a purpose, which I can absolutely appreciate. Bottom line here, guys, this is a very special, compact, tactical style folder made of premium materials. I mean, this is probably, actually, no, it definitely is the first knife I've even handled that does have this newer S45VN blade steel. Haven't had to sharpen or anything. It would be nice to have a sharpening choil, which they don't have, but I'm sure a lot of people will probably notch one out, honestly. But, you know, it's one of those things, premium materials, and it's made right here in the good old US of A, which doesn't mean something to everybody, but for those that it does mean something to, it is nice. It's a nice point of pride to carry something USA made in your pocket. It just is. You know, I don't know what it is about it, but yeah, I can definitely appreciate that, and I support that, and I enjoy the craftsmanship that kind of goes with this. Sure, this thing won't be for everybody, guys. Everybody watching this, you know, some of you might be watching this as something that's been recommended or subscription to my channel, which is mostly for watch reviews. Some of you might be thinking to yourself, wow, $395 for a knife that isn't a Sebenza. That probably sounds expensive, but there's actually a lot more expensive knives than that. Even some that are made overseas, even some that don't have quite as premium a blade steel. I mean, there's a wide array of very, very expensive knives that are out there for a lot of different reasons. So for those of you who can appreciate its kind of laundry list of amazing attributes, I would say you will absolutely be, you know, this will exceed your expectations. If you just like the aesthetic, but you don't have experience with Spartan blades, I would say that if you like the way this looks, and it looks like something that would fit in your hand well, you don't mind how much it sits out of the pocket. I mean, this thing is gorgeous. Look at, I mean, sure, this is considered the show side, right? But I think even the lock bar side looks damn good. I mean, when you look at just this really great and very original pocket clip, and then you have the milling, you have the signature there. You know, that's billboarding, but I'd say a masterclass in that. It's not really overpowering the blade. It just looks gorgeous. So although it is a very nice looking knife, it's also, you know, it has that nice tactical functional aspect to it, which, you know, I definitely can appreciate. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you like the video, please do hit like, and if you haven't already, please do subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.